y bienvenidos a este cafecito con Carmen Haydée Rivera. I'm Vicente Marias, the Center's Director of Research Programs. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to present the presentation of the latest book in Center Press, published by Center Press, Diaspora Journeys, Interviews with Puerto Rican Writers in the United States. So some of you may not know that Center is publishing a leading peer-reviewed journal in Puerto Rican Studies, the Center Journal, also publishes books that enhance our understanding of the Puerto Rican experience and the archipelago and the diaspora. This initiative was started in 2014 by Xavier Totti, former Center Press editor, who we started discussing today. I would like to thank him, as well as the current editor of Center Press, Giannina Braschi, for their hard work in making sure some info is out in the world. Diaspora Journeys builds on the legacy of another book, Puerto Rican Voices in English, Introduced to Writers, which was published in 1987, which was the first major compilation of interviews with Puerto Rican diaspora. There's a new collection of interviews aims to bridge both a generational and a geographical gap, gathering young diasporican writers, but also taking care to show that diasporican literature is being created and published all over the United States and not just in New York City. This collection of interviews serves as essential documentation of the growing Puerto Rican diaspora and aims to connect diasporican writers with other Black and Latinx communities in the United States. I'm sure after tonight's conversation with these writers, you will all be eager to get your copy of Diaspora Journeys. If you're here in person with us, you can do that at the check-in table and also during our reception. If you're on Zoom, you can check out the book on Central's website. I would now like to introduce the editor of Diaspora Journeys. Carmen Haydée Rivera was born in Puerto Rico and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, by parents who insisted on keeping Puerto Rican family traditions and customs alive in the U.S. context. She moved back to the island after spending years away from her birthplace. She received her Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts degrees in British and American literature from the University of Puerto Rico. She later returned to Boston and earned a PhD in English, specializing in multi-ethnic literature of the United States from Northeastern University. Her teaching and research interests diaspora Puerto Rican writers in the U.S. Latinx literature of the Hispanic Caribbean and diaspora and women studies. And with that, I will leave you with Carmen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be standing here before you tonight. I thank you for coming out in the rain and in a crispy, kind of cold weather for us islanders, ¿verdad? De la isla de Puerto Rico, which is really but I'm really happy to be here and also happy to see Ambrose joining us also via Zoom. I can truly say, as I stand here, that this is the book that has survived hurricanes, earthquakes, and a worldwide pandemic. I started this book, the interviews for this book, several years ago without really noticing or realizing what a journey it would become. And I say this with gratitude in my heart for the writers, some of you here tonight, which I will introduce in a minute, for the perseverance and patience. I collected the interviews, edited, transcribed, and brought them to this stage. Heartfelt thanks to Dr. Giannina Braschi and Professor Antonio Ruiz, Director, Associate Director of Arts and Culture at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies, for kindly hosting this event as part of an institution that has so much significance to the Puerto Rican community, not only in New York, but also in Puerto Rico. I wish to begin by acknowledging some people in the audience, beginning with my sister, Giannina Braschi, who is here with me, who took time off from her busy schedule to join me on this journey to New York, where our parents migrated 60 years ago, even before we were born. So I feel that we are coming full circle in a way to this place where they came before us, so many others came before us and walked these streets. So thank you, Giannina, for joining me. The publication of this work, as Kristen mentions, would not have been possible for the collaboration from the editor, Professor Xavier Doty, who graciously received the manuscript and allowed it to form part of the Central Press catalog. Xavier's enthusiasm, his patience throughout the writing process were instrumental in bringing this project to its term. Thanks also to the current Central Press staff, Cristina Castro, before and Cristina Perez, for working in the final stages of this project, and to José for the typesetting and formatting of the project, as well as for the digitalization of cover. And actually, I wanted to switch over to to this presentation. Let's see, how can I check this off? So that you can see the cover art a little better. Yes. And this is the beautiful cover art, a painting by Estefan Rodriguez, brought to my attention by Angel Antonio, actually. And her work is just beautiful in its colors and its dimensions. It's called Two Windows, Two Mountains. And it basically, it's an appropriate metaphor for the interviews that follow, because it frames two landscapes, right, coalescing with one another. And a new space is formed in the middle, right? Neither one or the other, but coalescing and being part of both together. And I think that as Diaspora Puerto Ricans, that's basically what we do, right? We bring our two cultures, our two histories, our two languages together in that space in between, right? And I think that her work captures this very well. Hands up and much gratitude to this evening's organizers, Kimberly Rohr and Roscari Rufino, and all the staff back in this room for the logistics, the many emails sent back and forth, and all the details required for the special occasion. And of course, to the writers here with me tonight, Caridad de la Luz, Migdalia Cruz, José Luis Torres Padilla, and hopefully Giannina Braschi, if she's making her way, she's caught in traffic, but hopefully she'll join us in a minute. I thank you for trusting me with your words, and also for the beginning of this journey, this book of Revelation, and for your presence tonight. Also having to make arrangements to come from various places. So, as with every other academic project in Puerto Rico, in a seminar on contemporary American drama, and he was the first one actually to include a diaspora Puerto Rican writer in his course, and it was Miguel Short Eyes. And when I read that book, as many of you might have also done, I was so nice with the fact that first, there was a Puerto Rican writer taught in a class, right? Second, because of his content. And third, because I knew that, like we were, there must be other writers as well that I hadn't been exposed to within an English department and a literature degree. So that first single act that Dr. Leary did opened up the many possibilities for me and interest in searching for these other writers that existed. You can imagine how many inquiries I had about the authors, and why this long list of writers that had been publishing several decades before I came out of that class hadn't been included in academic curricula
definitely not on the island, but also not out of it either. So my interest in diaspora Puerto Rican literature, I think, began at that stage. It also continued with my doctoral studies at Northeastern University under the tutorship of Dr. Bonnie Smith, a very avant-garde instructor, who actually allowed me the real privilege of focusing on what was then called multi-ethnic literatures of the United States, which involved close readings and literary analyses of works by Latinx, African American, Indigenous American, and Asian American writers. Again, within the space of an English department, I was able to expand my knowledge of the rich array of voices that form part of an American literary tradition, enriched by the many cultures, languages, and perspectives of the authors who narrate their histories and assert their presence in the world of letters. I begin with these two examples for the many students out there, perhaps in this audience or watching us via Zoom, because we now have the privilege of studying in different fields, right? Perhaps including some of you, including Puerto Rican, diaspora Puerto Rican literature, with much more access and possibilities. And I think it really takes committed educators to bring forth these paths of knowledge to let these students create their own journeys of discovery, especially when they can see, like I saw, relatable images reflected on the printed page. This may also turn into a life's vocation of reading, research, and teaching, like many of them, influenced by these very strong, courageous mentors who preceded us. In terms of the many works that influence this particular, sorry about that, where, as Kristen mentions, Carmen Haydée is what was very influential. This is an author who's a journalist still living in Puerto Rico, who published several interviews on diaspora Puerto Rican writers in Nuevo Dia, in Periódico Nuevo Dia, for many years. And collected them first in Puerto Rican Voices in English, interviews with writers, and in another collection that she has titled A Viva Voz, Entrevistas a Escritores Puertorriqueños. And it was through these interviews when I was a graduate student that I really looked at these writers and their histories and their circumstances, right? Their life stories, the things that Carmen Dolores asked them, very incisive and thought-provoking questions. And so collected in these editions that made a real difference when you are studying literature, when you study the literature, and then alongside that have the words of the writers as well. Many of them, in my case, all of them are still alive, right? In her case, many of them alive at the time that she did the publication, some have passed away, but still you get firsthand knowledge of where they were born, the language that they practice at home, their customs and traditions, and how they kept that going in the United States. So I was very influenced by that as a graduate student. And then as a teacher for the past 25 years, I kept going back to these interviews and others that have been since published until I realized, okay, this has a certain publication date, and more than 20 years have passed since the first publication. It's time for a new publication. Right? We have new authors out there as we speak, writing, bringing this publication. We need to know the stories of these writers as well. And so that's what influenced me and motivated me to collect this work. I also was interested in, as Kristen mentioned also, not all the writers are currently located in the Northeast, right? And in Carmen Dolores' case, most of the writers were living in New York at the time. In my collection that bridges this gap, hopefully bridges the gap between these two publications, they're not necessarily located in New York City. Some of them are, and they're not necessarily only dedicated to writing. Some of them are university professors, spoken word artists, community organizers, singers, actors, environmental and political activists. Some of them are journalists, translators, editors, They span geographical regions from eastern US, New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, to central states like Illinois and Michigan, to the West Coast and beyond, like California, and all the way out to Hawaii. Rodney Morales' work is, he lives in Hawaii. And though some of these writers carry on the legacy of their predecessors collected by Caridad, they also bring important innovative writing styles and contemporary thematic concerns to the forefront with their multifaceted and inspirational lives and works. So I wanted to provide a brief collage of the writers' cover pages, right, or covers of some of their books, right? Giannina Braschi, I'm hoping that she arrives at some point, United States of Banana. For Song is Rodney Morales' work, The Noise of Infinite One, Migdalia Cruz, Javier Avila's The Trouble with Me. Also, José Luis Torres, Padilla, who's in here as well, Migrations, Migdalia Cruz's The Grito del Bronx and Other Plays, Unas Pintadas de Azul, Blue Fingernails, a bilingual collection by Lawrence Larry LaFontaine Stokes, Aya de Leon, writing with California, Side Chick Nation. In the Heights, Lin-Manuel Miranda is also in this connection. Salas Rivera, The Tertiary, which also was translated into Spanish, poems, My Broken Language, Guiara Alegría Hoods, and The Politician by Caridad de la Luz. And this Hostos Review, which was a collection of open mic micrófono abierto poetry readings from several of the poets contained in this work, where Maria Mariposa Fernandez is also included. This is a list of the table of contents. The book has an introduction. I wrote an introduction, kind of overall history.
Development of diasporic Puerto Rican letters in the US, followed by the interviews. And then at the end, there's an additional section with information on the authors that includes their websites, their blogs, their Facebook accounts, Twitter or X accounts, and other information that is helpful for students and the reading public at large. This collection is by no means exhaustive, right? We're not talking about all the writers that exist out there. It's just a small sample of the many voices that continue to enhance a literary tradition that is still often underplayed under hegemonic studies of American literature. With the prominence and the recognition that many of these writers have received, it is no longer possible to underestimate the significance of their work. On the contrary, exactly because they have gained national and even international recognition, their writing is more pertinent than ever. The authors in this collection, as well as many others like them, are an important and essential part of our journey toward a richer and more inclusive understanding of a constantly evolving American literary landscape. Their work requires continuous examination and critical study. And my hope is that some of you in this audience or watching us are inspired to continue the journey of interviewing and publishing the words of other current and future writers to keep the circle going. You will discover, as I have done during the process of completing this publication, what a rewarding and enriching experience it really is. Dealing with these authors, some of them in person, others through online, through Google Meets, through Zoom, through emails. It was such a joyous experience for me. Teaching their works in my classes that I've taught at the University of Puerto Rico, again, for the past 25 years, both undergraduate, graduate, and graduate, has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And that's why this moment is so important and special, to have them also here, some of them also here with me. And so now I wanted to invite the authors up to the stage to engage in a conversation about their writing process. And I thank you again, all of you, for coming and joining us this evening. is it to talk to people? Nosotros los puertorriqueños y puertorriqueñas que somos tan conversadores, conversadoras. How many boricuas in the house? More power to us.
Yes.
And how many bilingual boricuas? Okay. How many working on that bilingualism? Así somos, ¿verdad? Así somos. Let me get my book. Okay. So I wanted to start off with everyone introducing themselves, and then we can get to some questions that I have for them, and also get to a Q&A session with you as well. So.
My name is José Luis Torres Padilla. That's my full name, but my writing name is Jail Torres. You want to give us more information?
A little more.
I just, since you did the introduction so far. No, anyway, yeah, I'm a former retired now, professor of Latinx literature, mostly American literature, and Latinx and Latin. I've been a creative writer during the time that I've been working in the university system. Like for 40 years, I've been writing. My first publication was probably close to 40 years ago. I also taught creative writing, so that's also part of my background. I was born in Calle, Puerto Rico. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Calle, right? La ciudad de la Bruma, up in the mountains. But I left very early, like 5, 6 years old. So my formative years were really in New York City, more specifically in the South Bronx, during the 60s and 70s. So I'm married. I have 2 wonderful sons, and one of them is right there sitting. Yeah, and that's about it. So I want one more time.
Hi, my name is Caridad de la Luz. I'm a spoken word artist, better known as La Bruja. I started my career at the New Rican Poets Cafe in 1996, and I became the executive director of the New Rican Poets Cafe in 2022. Very exciting. I also won an Emmy that same year for Legacy of Puerto Rican Poetry. And it has been quite the diasporic journey. I spent all of my summers in Puerto Rico, in Manatí, Puerto Rico, Pugnado, Manatí. And so I was very blessed to have those worlds, the New Rican world and Puerto Rico itself. I'm born and raised in the Bronx, still live in the Bronx in the Soundview section. And yeah, poetry was the foundation of so much other art that has been created, but poetry is life.
I'm Migdalia Cruz, and I'm a playwright. I was born in the Bronx, a Bronx hospital. Can't get more Bronx than that. My dad was born in San Sebastian and my mother in Cabo Rojo. And they met in the Bronx. In fact, they met over a candy store on Webster Avenue, fell in love, and had 4 girls. And we stayed in the Bronx up until we were burned out. And then actually we moved to the projects. I suppose that might have been considered a step up. I'm not sure. But as a writer, I wrote my first play when I was 6. I wrote a puppet show about civil rights. And all the Black people were Spalding balls, and all the white people were Kleenex tissues. And they were going to lynch a Black man, and the Black man asked for a cigarette for his last request, and they gave him a match, and he lit the Klan on fire. So I thought, well, I guess that's my theme. But then I was only 6. And then when I was about 8, I wrote a play. Well, I wrote an essay, really, and a reflection about my best friend who was raped and murdered and thrown off the roof of a thing. And I remember thinking that writing is the only way I'm going to be able to create a history for who we were. Because when we were like the forgotten people, people burnt out of buildings, people dying every day. gang violence in a way that you can't even imagine. They pitted the Puerto Ricans against the Blacks, and everyone else fled the Bronx after redlining. So they sort of forced us into a state of rage. And destruction, feeling that being Puerto Rican meant that you were forgotten. And I remember thinking that can't be. I can't let that be. You know, I love my people and loved all my aunts that were still in Puerto Rico. They fled the projects back to Cabo Rojo. And I was like, writing is a way to keep our history alive. And I didn't have any role models for myself when I was young. I read Perry Thomas's Down These Mean Streets. And I thought, oh, somebody else is writing in the world that I understand, in a world that is poor, but that is also, although it's poor, full of hope and full of joy and full of laughter and life. And you can't let people take that away from you. And for me, the gift was to write it down. That's enough of me.
Giannina is just joining us. Thank you, Giannina, for joining us this evening.
Nací en San Juan de Puerto Rico, crecí al lado de las olas del mar. De ella aprendí que era verdad la mentira y mentira la verdad. De ellas aprendí a mi ser y el movimiento de mi poesía es como el movimiento de las olas del mar, que siempre se están moviendo de lado a lado y que tú ves las olas, una subiendo más alta que la otra, pero todas terminan como espuma en la arena y aprenden que ninguna es superior a la otra, sino que todas están ahí para crear una orquesta musical de sonido. Y de ellas aprendí a escribir y de ellas aprendí que era poeta y que quería crear música. Gracias.
Okay. So you see how the emotions run forth, right? And a lot of emotion is contained in this book. With the questions, some of the questions that I asked the writers, the reaction that I got was that was a difficult question for me to answer when I thought that writing them, they would be able to talk about it freely, right? To talk about it. And at the beginning, I wasn't quite sure of la profundidad que tienen que ir to be able to answer some questions that I thought would have been easy. And so this is part of the learning process, right? The learning curve that we do as interviewers. And that also enriches the text even more. So I wanted to kind of circle back on some topics that you can talk about. For example, your experience in a literary tradition. I know perhaps as you write, you're not thinking of yourselves in a literary tradition, but when we read you and when we teach you, we are thinking about you in that way. Both, in my case, I'm thinking about an American literary tradition and a Puerto Rican literary tradition, because you traverse those spaces. And I wanted you to perhaps comment on your experience in writing within these two spaces, how you navigate the two spaces, the language perhaps that you feel more comfortable writing in, or if you crisscross languages in your work. Experience and language.
Well, as a scholar and as an academic professor, I understand that, well, I think that it's important, to be able to look at what we do, from these two different perspectives. But, the sort of the reflection when it comes to being a diasporican writer is that you really are in the between in your life, but also as a writer and also in the publishing world. Because sometimes, as the debate whether this is Puerto Rican literature or this is American literature, it's still going on. I mean, and I don't know if that's been decided in Puerto Rico, But I don't know if, the Puerto Ricans reading my work because they're mostly English. I mean, like, I feel I'm bilingual, but I don't, and español es mi lengua materna, pero aún así, I still write in English because, I was 5 years old when I came here. In my formative years, I learned English and then I became a professor of English and so forth and so forth. So I think it's an interesting question, this in between for your life, which is what you're writing about, right? It's, for me anyways, that constant, what is it like to be in that in between and what does it mean? And then at the same time, dealing with a publishing process that sometimes has a hard time with, well, what is this? Is this Puerto Rican literature? Is this American literature? US literature? Where does it belong? And then it affects also whether they publish you or not, right? Because even in Latinx literature, there's more proclivity to kind of, Mexican American writing. And it's just now that we're beginning to see Puerto Rican writers of the diaspora get published, in mainstream. So I think it reflects our own lived experiences, the whole writing process and also the publishing process.
I can't say that I've had very much success in publishing my own work. Like even what you featured, the poetician that was, self-published, and I know you got that cover online because that was on that, because it's a different cover. Like I've never really had, I don't know if it's the patience or the guidance on the times that I have tried to publish my poetry. It's been rejected or ignored, or I don't know what it is. I think maybe that's why the spoken word art works for me, because then people can hear it, experience it, but that I've thought that maybe, my poetry doesn't read well. I don't know if it speaks off the page as well as I can speak it out loud. But thankfully, because of anthologies and work of other Puerto Rican writers, editors like Migdalia Cruz, who's in the audience as well. I've been in anthologies, and thankfully for that, I've been in the literary world. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. And even still, like when I read it, I'm like, I should have done this. It's like, I think that's also part of the fear, is the finality of the print. So, I think there's something there for me that I haven't quite conquered. But, it did push me to create albums and recordings and do performances, one-woman shows. And, I like more performing and putting it out into the ether in that way. And, New Yorican is the identity that, I embraced very young. Like I found papers that I've written, and like 10 years old, I am New Yorican. And I was like, wow, I knew that young, and very bilingual, very Spanglish, very Slanglish. It's an ever evolving language, Spanglish language sandwich. It's like we're constantly growing, and I love that about us too. We still are finding, the terms for ourselves. Like, are we Latinx? Are we Latin? Are we Hispanic? Are we Boricua? Are we, like all of these terms. And I love that we don't have that one thing yet. To describe us, it's kind of like, in the Tao, like to know the Tao, you can't say what it is. It's like, it's beyond. So I love that about us and about what we create. And yeah. I guess in more English dominant, I had to learn and relearn Spanish. And I'm still, of course, I have not wrangled that beast of a language, but I'm also, learning Taino and learning Yoruba and learning, these other languages, ancient languages, and that I try to incorporate the little bits that I do learn into what I do as well, so that none of the roots are lost.
muy bella. Pero yo estoy segura, quiero establecer un diálogo con ustedes. Yo estoy segura que tú puedes escribir muy bien y que te estás minimizando a ti misma como los puertorriqueños hacemos. Pero estoy segura que en el fondo escribes muy bien, porque yo no veo diferencia entre escribir y performear. Yo creo que es una y estoy segura, muchas veces el drama es muy difícil de captar en una página, porque uno lo siente como experiencia humana, pero I'm sure you're a great writer. I'm sure of that. So no te minimices a ti misma.
Thank you.
Eso es lo que nos han enseñado desde que nacemos, a quitarnos a nosotros de enfrente para dejar que los otros nos tomen el puesto. Y es lo que no quiero que tú hagas,
Thank you.
porque yo también lo he hecho y lo hemos hecho todos. Así es que tenemos que aprender. Yo me acuerdo cuando yo empecé a escribir a escribir en inglés, y me acuerdo de Miguel Algarín, y una vez dije, bueno, me excusé, dije, yo no escribo bien el inglés, y me dijo, nunca te excuses, nunca digas que no lo haces bien, porque lo haces muy bien. Y me enseñó una lección, porque eso es una de las cosas que nos hacen a nosotros desde que nacemos, nos están minimizando y continuamente nos están poniendo abajo, y nosotros mismos nos ponemos abajo y nos ponemos después, no nos ponemos al frente, nos ponemos después y detrás. Y eso es una forma de quitarnos del puesto que nos corresponde. Y lo estoy diciendo sin ningún egocentrismo, pero con un sentido de ser, pero no egocéntrico, porque a mí no me interesan los egocéntricos, pero me interesa tener un ser. Y estoy segura que tú tienes un gran ser cuando escribes. Así es que eso es lo que quería decir.
I just want to add just about spoken word. I think it's fantastic you're doing spoken word. And I think
Yeah,
spoken word is poetry. We have to defend it. We have to support it. It's just very difficult because you're on the stage. That's where you perform. But you're also a writer. You have to write what you're going to perform. And I actually taught and started a SUNY class for one of the few classes on spoken word, you know, in the creative writing program we had. And I think what the difficulty is, once you perform it, you give it to the audience and they get it, but then somehow we lose it, right? Because it's not published. And that's the thing. And then supposedly there's no record, but there is a record because you performed it. I think we just have to support the spoken word, you know, poets, and be able to also then have it in anthologies, you know, and be able to then have it in records so that we know that this also was performed, but it's like plays, right? Plays are also now published so that we can then also read them, study them. I think that's great what you're doing. So
In the interview process, actually, this came up with our conversation, with Caridad and my conversation. And I do, y me comprometo aquí delante de todos ustedes to put her on the spot. I told her, Caridad, we have to get your work published. We have to get your work published. And I said it from the bottom of my heart in ese momento. And I'm committing myself, and hold me up to this commitment. We're going to get your work into an anthology or a collection because it needs to be there as well. Your performances are wonderful. La audiencia se va llena, but we want to teach you in our classes as well. And the way we do that is through books.
And if there's not a book, and I've been in a lot of books, and I know none of you read any of my books.
I have, Migdalia, I have.
Or you may have seen a play once or twice, but you probably never read any of the books I'm in. I was in all these anthologies, you know, young Puerto Rican women with long dark hair. I was like, how many anthologies can you be in about with free people with color? Because they're looking for places to pigeonhole us. We were in this side of literature and that side of literature, and actually not accepting us as a part of world literature.
Yes.
But that's why it's so important that you do that your spoken word gets recorded, so that it can be transcribed. What you need is a secretary to follow around. Because I know it's, if your métier is to speak your words, then somebody needs to record it, and then somebody needs to do that horrible writing thing down.
That's what you.
But it's important because you need to say, I'm here always. we can't like let up on the fact that, you know, oh, and I'm a poet now, I'm a playwright, you know, if people don't see your name on the spine of a book, you don't exist as a writer. For so many people, and there's so much of world literature. And just to go back to the thing about language, I've always written in English, but I spoke only Spanish until I was 5, and then I spoke only English, and my parents always spoke Spanish to me. So for me, language was like a weird schizophrenic thing. Like what, you know, and I remember going to the grocery store to buy like, you know, toilet paper. I would ask for a paper toilet because I spoke in Spanish syntax. And people would laugh at my English all the time, but I was like, I don't care. And I also thought English is the ugliest language.
Yeah.
And I was writing about really ugly things. I was like, I can't write in Spanish. Spanish is beautiful and romantic and about
Yeah.
and the language of my abuelos. I want to write the ugliest language, the most direct, the most brutal, because I'm writing about a world that is brutal.
Yeah.
And that felt like, it felt right to me as I was coming up to do that. So just to say that, and you'll get it published.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Can
Should
you
you need to.
comment on authors who have inspired you or performers who have inspired you? And who are you currently reading? Authors that have inspired you. This is a really hard question. So many out there, right? But which work comes to mind, an author that comes to mind that you say, when I read this person's work, I was very inspired?
Well, I thought it was very kismet that you mentioned Miguel Piñero, and then you mentioned Miguel Algarín, and these are founders of the New York Poets Cafe. And for me, Pedro Pietri, he was like the first, you know, El Reverendo was the first time that I read poetry that I was like, oh, okay, that this is speaking to me. This is what I want to do. And, you know, then once my Spanish got a little better and I learned a little more, then I went into Julia de Burgos and then found just a whole other, I can't even put into words how I love Julia. But those writers really changed my life.
Well, you know, Migdalia mentioned P.D. Thomas, and I think for a lot of us, P.D. Thomas is probably one of the first inspirations, and it was for me because, and oddly before that, I read a lot of Bernard Mulliman. First of all, you know, I've read so much because my life has been really geared to you know, teaching literature, so much. But anyway, but that was the first time when I was reading. I was maybe 15, 16, and I read him. And it was the same reaction. This is a person that I can relate to. This is somebody actually telling a story that's very similar to mine. I mean, not the prison terms and the gangs and stuff, but the family, right? That's what drew me, the idea that this is a Puerto Rican family in New York City, just like mine, you know, living in the Bronx, South Bronx or El Barrio, you know. And that inspired me. But today, you know, I've read so much and I've been inspired different phases in my life with different kind of writers. So it's not like one, but today I think that like my North Star is really Toni Morrison, because I believe that Toni Morrison had that sweet spot where she brought together a social conscious literature, which I aspire to. That's what I want to write. And yet it's eloquent and beautiful and lyrical. And I said, it's just gorgeous writing and aesthetically it's pleasing. At the same time, you know, you read her books and you're getting your mind fed with so much intellectual kind of, you know, rigor. And that's, if I had to mention writer that I want, that's what I want, something like that. I know it's hard. But yeah, if you're going to set goals, right? Set, you know, set them real high. Yeah, absolutely.
Yo, pues empecé a leer a los puertorriqueños, me los leí. Todos esos que ustedes han mencionado los leí. Luego fui a España y me leí a los españoles desde el principio hasta el final. Luego me leí a los franceses, me leí a los italianos, a los alemanes. Me los he leído a todos y los griegos. Y no hay, es que me gusta leer, me fascina leer y me los he leído a todos. Y y he encontrado mi estilo en muchos de ellos. Y mi estilo ha variado a través de las lenguas en que he escrito, porque yo he escrito en 3 lenguas, en español, en Spanglish y en inglés. Ahora escribo en inglés y escribo porque me gusta tener distancia de mis sentimientos. Escribo en inglés porque me gusta estar distante de mis sentimientos ahora. No sé por qué, pero me gusta. Y porque me he convertido un poco más cerebral, que tampoco me gusta tanto, pero mis sentimientos están dentro del cerebro ahora. Y pues, ¿qué puedo decirle? A través de los libros, El Imperio de los Sueños, que lo escribí en español, eran influencias puertorriqueñas y españolas desde la Edad Media hasta el siglo XX. Y mi vida en Puerto Rico y mi vida en Nueva York también. Y luego cuando escribí Yo Voy en Spanglish, pues la influencia eran las películas que veía en el momento. Todas las películas que estaban de moda están en ese libro. Y la experiencia era como, mi intención era conquistar la realidad, la conquista de la realidad. Que diferente al imperio de los sueños, en que es un imperio de sueños, de ilusiones. Y luego United States of Banana es una crítica de lo que tú has dicho, de lo que nos han hecho por tanto tiempo de la colonización, a través de Hamlet y Segismundo y Zaratustra, que son los personajes, y Giannina. Hamlet como el poeta actor, Giannina como la poeta política o niña, Zaratustra como el filósofo, y todos estos personajes van a la Estatua de la Libertad, al calabozo, a liberar a Segismundo de la prisión de Estados Unidos, de vivir bajo la Estatua de la Libertad, debajo de la falda de la Estatua de la Libertad. Y lo liberamos. Y tenemos hasta una fiesta en la corona de la Estatua de la Libertad, y ahí se celebra la libertad de Puerto Rico. Cuando le preguntan, el rey le pregunta a Segismundo qué quiere para Puerto Rico, que va a ser a Puerto Rico un estado. Y Segismundo, en ese momento en que le preguntan a Segismundo, le dice, pues vamos a hacer a Puerto Rico un estado. Y vamos a hacer a todos los países de Latinoamérica, los vamos a hacer como era Puerto Rico antes. Quiere decir, le vamos a dar un pasaporte americano, pero los vamos a hacer como colonia de Estados Unidos, y a Puerto Rico lo vamos a hacer estado. Y Segismundo ahí, yo digo, ¿y qué yo voy a contestar en estos momentos? Cuando te viene la pregunta esa, en el momento, ¿cómo por primera vez voy a decidir mi estado, lo que yo soy internamente? Y ahí me salió una libertad por dentro, y no era mío, es la libertad del personaje, pero quiero decir que ahí dije, no, tiene que ser la libertad. Y salió libre, o sea, salió la libertad ahí. Y pues de eso se trata mi obra. La última, lo que estoy escribiendo ahora, Putinoica, que es sobre esta época de Putin y de pendejo. ¿Sabes quién es pendejo, verdad?
No.
Ah, ¿saben quién es pendejo? Así es que la época de Putin y de pendejo. Por como antes era perestroika, ¿te acuerdas? Perestroika, la época de Gorbachev, pues ahora es putinoica. Yo dije, me invento este término y surgió ese. Y están las putinas que son las putinas de Putin, que son las amantes, Melania, Ivana, Ivanka, todas ellas. Las putinas, todo esto.
Check that out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Migdalia, you wanted to say something about that?
I did, but I was thinking about that. I was like, oh.
But
My next book project actually is, I'm writing, I was asked to do a collection of my own plays, which is yay, finally. I mean, I have one like this, so this will be a new one. This will be a collection of my latest plays, and it's called The Impossible Plays of Migdalia Cruz, because it's all plays that no one would produce. They're either too big, too sexual, too grotesque, too something. So I was like, I really want to put these, I want to pretend I'm Shakespeare and write these really big plays, even though I know no one's going to produce them, because I felt like, or the theaters that I usually work with, because they have low budgets and it's hard to do big cast plays. But it was like, my vision is not getting smaller, it's getting bigger.
That's good.
And part of that is becoming a citizen of the world, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
you know, it's like, I'm Puerto Rican, but I met the Dalai Lama. You know, I kissed Robert Redford's cheek. I've done a variety of very strange things. And I feel like.
What did you feel when you kiss his cheek?
I thought he's so red. He's like, he's really red.
It's going in a different.
It's more fun to hold the Dalai Lama's hand, I've got to say.
Yeah.
More emotional for me
Yeah.
to meet somebody who brought life into the room with
Right.
him.
Yeah.
But I felt like, but I feel like my career is like, where am I? I've been writing, I wrote my first play when I was 6, I'm 64. And the next thing is about all the things everybody tells me I can't do it and I want to do still.
Good.
And to keep doing it until, if I don't do it, then it'll be somebody else. I'll read my daughter, who's also a playwright
Good.
and an actor. It's
Yeah.
like, what's next?
How did
So
you
I-
discover you were a playwright?
Well,
I want to know, that's why I asked.
I took a class by mistake in college. I was a math major and I took a class in Samuel Beckett.
Yeah.
But I thought it was actually about Thomas Becket. 'Cause I was a history minor.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going into this class to learn about English history and I ended up reading these really, really strange plays that I thought, oh,
They are.
I forgot I was supposed to do this. I
Yeah.
remember what I knew when I was 8. Like what I really wanted to do as a writer was to express human emotion. And can I do that? And can I tell my parents and break their hearts?
Yeah.
Because they were like, what do you want to do?
Oh.
You know, like, you're not gonna be a math teacher, you're not gonna be a doctor, you're not gonna be a lawyer, you're not gonna get out of the ghetto, you're gonna be an artist. We don't understand. But in the end, I think they did accept who I became. Because I think when they actually heard my words, and that's the thing about spoken word, when they actually came to see a production, they were like, how did you,
Right.
why did you think we were worthy? I'm crying a lot today. I think it's because it's raining.
It goes.
But like they saw my work and they were like, you know, we didn't ever think anyone would think our lives were worth writing about. We didn't think we'd see them. We didn't think we'd see them embodied in actors. I mean, they were like, how bold you are, right? Que atrevida. And I was like, Mom and Dad, you taught me that. You taught me to be atrevida. You taught me to show myself, to be proud, and I'm proud of you.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you for that, Migdalia. I think we'll have one more question and then we can go to the audience and converse. I just wanted you to talk a bit about your experience collaborating with me on this project. How did you, I mean, the first time I was very bold to go to you and ask you, give me your interview, give me your words, especially, all of you. And the others that are here. I want to hear your side now. I want to know what it is like to be interviewed and how you go about that process. I know I'm not the only person that has interviewed you. I'm probably the most special person. But I know that interviewing is difficult for you to tell us, bare your souls.
Well,
So what was your experience?
For me, yeah, I've been interviewed several times, but this was special.
like?
This is not only because of you, but because I knew that I was going to be included in this amazing, anthology with other writers that have similar experiences to me, that are part of my people. And I was really very proud and honored to be in it. And, but then, you know, the questions you asked were very provocative in a good way. And it made me made me think, you know, a lot of insights into myself, these questions. And then knowing that they would be published, you know, you always kind of think, you know, and then, but you want to be honest and you know, you want to be out there. So I enjoyed the process and thank you for letting me be part of it.
Yeah. Bravo tuyo.
Yeah. I was so proud to become a part of a community that I didn't know I was a part of. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know.
Exactly.
And I thought, what are you doing? And why did you choose me? And who else is going to be in it? And how do I fall in this group of writers? And I thought, well, this is sort of why we write, right? We write to find community, and finding community in other writers' voices. It's just so special and so beautiful. So I thought, well, right on. That's I'm there because I need to be there. You know, so, and I'm here because even though I have a bad hip, because I needed to be here as I limped along, my poor daughter dragging me. I feel like we need to make those choices all the time, like where we're going to stand and where we're going to stand up and who we're going to stand up for. And here we are.
You know, as I said, it's easier for me to speak. So when we started sharing, I said so much. And then when I read it, again, the finality of the page, I was like, oh my God, that's so personal. I felt like exposed, you know, like I said so much. And I was like, okay, I don't know if we should say all of that. You could know that, but I don't know if I want the world to know that. But it was intimate, you know, it was like speaking to a confidant. And we made a connection, like, you know, by sharing all of that and knowing that you know those things about me that, you know, that most of the world will never know. It created a connection. And so then when I went to Puerto Rico, one of the times that I went to Puerto Rico, then we got to meet in person. And then I asked if you could take me to certain places, and the two places that I wanted to go, and you took me,
I did.
was to Raul Julia's grave, and then to Walter Mercado's grave.
Oh, wow. That's great.
It's a very spiritual experience.
Out of all the places you could have asked.
But I felt, you know, I felt safe. I felt comfortable with you. I still do, you know, so I'm so grateful. And yeah, what you captured is real. Real.
Mucho, mucho, mucho.
Yeah.
Mucho.
Y además ella persistía, ella persistía porque ella, yo decía, ya basta, no quiero contestar preguntas, porque no me gusta contestar preguntas, me gusta hacerlas. A mí me gusta hacer preguntas, no contestar. Y entonces ella insistía, y yo dije, sigo, pero fue como una batalla conmigo, ¿verdad? Y sin embargo, yo encuentro que Carmen Haydée es espléndida, generosa y persistente. Ella no se rinde por nada, ella sigue y hasta que no lo acaba, ella no para. Y eso me gusta porque me hace seguir. Así que te lo agradezco porque me caíste tan bien cuando te conocí. De verdad, me caíste bien y me pude comunicar contigo y dialogar contigo y seguir adelante. Así es que te lo agradezco.
La agradecida soy yo, la afortunada soy yo de poder tener estas personas tan maravillosas, tan reconocidas como parte de mi proyecto. Yo me siento muy honrada y me siento también que hemos llegado a un nivel de comprensión mutua. Algunos de nosotros nos hemos conocido de hace años. Yo conozco a José. Bueno, nuestra historia comienza en la Universidad de Puerto Rico cuando yo tenía 18 años. Y los demás he conocido a través del camino. Así es que para mí ha sido un journey, a really, really emotional, important journey. And I want to share that with you. I want you to read these works and I want you to look at these interviews and say, I can connect to this person. And I am inspired to read their works, actually. I'm inspired to get their books. And I'm inspired to do my own interviewing, right, for other people and other writers. Y esta herencia que tenemos nosotros, bicultural y bilingüe, que nos regalaron nuestros ancestros, qué maravilloso poder celebrar eso, ¿verdad? Qué maravilloso poder tener familias que nos desenvolvemos en español, en inglés y en spanglish, como dice Giannina.
Trilingüe, somos trilingües.
Trilingües, sí.
No, no,
sí.
no bilingüe, tri.
Así que.
Trinamos.
Sí, sí.
Nosotros trinamos.
And what a wonderful experience. I am the one that is honored to have you here tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to join me, and to the crowd as well, to the people watching us. And so I want to give you a round of applause. And now, Criste, you will tell us how much time we have to actually get questions from the audience. Okay. Questions from the audience? En español, en inglés?
Oh, there's one coming over.
Can you hear me?
No. Ahora?
Sí, ahora sí.
Hola. Thank you for everything you've said. It's been very inspiring. So I'm starting to write as an immigrant to New York during the Operation Bootstrap years.
Wow.
So I've been here actually, I left 67 years ago. I know. So one of the things that I experienced was this twilight zone presence where I was here in New York as a Puerto Rican, but then I was in Puerto Rico. Our family went back to Puerto Rico when I was 14 years old. So I was in between these two worlds. And I'm wondering, how do you feel about that feeling? Do you experience that too? Do you feel differently as a Puerto Rican here in New York versus when you're on the island? Am I making myself clear?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's.
Thank you.
I think when you're in the island, you feel more solid, more stable in many ways. At me, yo nací en Puerto Rico. O sea, when you're in the island, you feel you have roots, you know? When you're here, you feel your roots are, I don't know where, but they are not here, and then they are not there either. They are in the world, they are maybe lost. Or maybe you realize what Gertrude Stein said, that when you take the roots out of the earth, you realize how fragile they are and small. They are not that as big as we think they are, but some people think they are very big, and for them they are very big. For me, I don't know. I don't know what roots are. I have lost them. I have to be honest. What was your question? What? Yeah.
How do you feel in both places?
Well, that's what happens. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. You're in limbo sometimes. I think, huh? Does it happen to you?
And I think it happens to all.
I think
Yeah.
that, isn't that the essence of what we're as
Yeah.
writers?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that our experience is sort of like you being in the hallway
Yeah.
between two rooms, and even if you're either room, you still feel like you're in the hallway. That's how I feel. And then I'm trying to figure out,
Yeah.
you know, what that's about. That's really what I'm trying to write
But let me tell you something, like yesterday or the day before, I went to a conference of Americans. And I was hearing them and they felt so comfortable in their culture and they felt so proud of what they are doing. And it was about a book about New York written by an Italian who was saying that the Italians have a lot to learn from the Americans, you know, and I say it's the opposite. The Americans have so much to learn from the Italians. How dare you? You know, I was so angry. Honestly, I was so angry because Rome has existed for I don't know how many years and it still has power in the world, you know, and it transformed from having ancient Rome, Petronius and Ovid, to having Michelangelo and Leonardo. You know, how do you transform to have always greatness in different ages, you know, but still produce greatness? So when they think that the Italians have to imitate the American system, I said it's the opposite. If the Italians imitate the American system, what would happen to them is that they would go with their weakness. You know, you never follow your weakness, you follow your strength. The Americans follow their strength. But if I imitate an American, I'm following a weakness because I'm not American. My strength is not in being an American, it's in being myself. I don't know how to explain this, but it's something that I have realized in life. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah,
You-
absolutely.
Huh?
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
as a writer, what I've come to find is because I feel like I don't know where home is all the
Yeah.
time, because I do live in between both places. I began to think about when you talk about roots. This is
Yeah.
something I tell my writing students. Roots go underground and they go very far.
Yeah,
So we still have our roots. But meanwhile, we as the writer or the artist, we center ourselves with our ancestors. So you're reaching for your ancestors above you and you're feeling your ancestors at your feet. And you're understanding that you're rooted wherever you are. And it's not because you made a choice, I'm more American or I'm more Puerto Rican or I'm more whatever you want to label yourself. You're yourself. And then finding your unique voice as a writer. It's about paying attention to your ancestors, I think, whoever they are. And they may go beyond Puerto Rico, and they usually do. And you'll find them in Africa, and you'll find them in Europe, and you'll find them all over the fucking
true.
place.
yeah.
But they're all a part of you, and you have to feel that in your viscera in order to write
Yeah,
about it.
very, very true. Very true. Beautiful.
Knowing that I was New Rican because I was born in New York, it didn't make me less Puerto Rican to me. Like I never felt less Puerto Rican. I actually felt more Puerto Rican almost, like because I felt like I had something to defend from afar, like on this land, we're fighting. I'm on the land that we're fighting. And so I have always defended Puerto Rico, even though I didn't speak fluently in Spanish. I saw myself and my work as a bridge. And I've even drawn that, like in my first one-woman show, it was called Boogie Rican. It was about being Puerto Rican from the Boogie Down Bronx. So it was like New Rican, but more specific, right? Boogie Rican. But then I draw myself as a bridge because I'm connecting both those worlds and joining them. You know, they're together, but yet apart, physically only, but in spirit, like this.
I have to say something. In what I find that I'm Puerto Rican is in my way of thinking, which are my roots. I left Puerto Rico when I was 20 years old, but I find that the way I think is totally Puerto Rican. The way my humor comes out is totally Puerto Rican. The way I laugh, the way I communicate is totally Puerto Rican. So I am Puerto Rican, but not because I defend Puerto Rico, although I defend Puerto Rico, but because it is inside my structure, my pattern of existing, my life. You know,
Yeah, it's in your DNA.
it's in, yeah.
Even if you try to deny it.
Because you know, I have a rebel inside, and like all of us, we have a rebel inside, and that rebel is Puerto Rican.
Ahora seremos puertorriqueños o no hay que definirnos más.
Exacto.
Yo soy de aquí, de allá, y yo no voy a decir soy esto, soy lo otro. Somos todo, al igual que no le decimos a la gente,
Exacto.
binary, esto. No, es un mundo entero. El Webster hoy mismo añadió como 700 palabras al diccionario. Todo cambia, todo vuelve. Anyway, pero mi pregunta es, porque yo sí soy escritora, aunque no me han publicado, un poquito. Y lo que quiero saber es, ¿qué palabras de ánimo ustedes tienen para alguien como yo? Que es como yo digo, yo escribo, no completamente en secreto, pero no me he publicado ni comparto tanto, comparto algunas de las cosas. ¿Qué palabras de ánimo le pueden dar ustedes a una persona mayor como yo o a una persona más joven? Para seguir escribiendo y para seguir adelante.
Read it out loud. It's just to share it is the best. I find that has been that difference when you share it out loud. Then you know what resonates, or you know what didn't hit or what didn't connect, or it gives you kind of a gauge on then what to print, I guess. But to share it is just so important for yourself, and then for the people listening to know, oh, wow, I'm not the only one that feels that way. Or, it's a connecting force, and it just will build you up in all ways. And, we host open mics all this time. So, all you have to do is come through. October 4th, Women Orto Wednesdays at the Puerto Rican Poets Cafe, 7 p.m. is dedicated to the women. Come through. Ahora tenemos contrato.
Yeah. Yes.
Go.
Yes, please.
I'm going on Friday night, so I'll see you there. Adiós, mañana. Sí, que es hoy.
Yeah.
Jueves, sí,
Yeah.
mañana.
Mañana.
I'm also doing my new one-woman show from Puerto Rico at the Puerto Rican Poets Cafe, October 21st. And I am very proud of that work. It's still in process, but it's my love letter to my family and to my island, to my roots, to my truth. So I really hope that you come and see that.
And I'm trying to take her to Puerto Rico. Hopefully in November, we'll see that show in el Teatrito Julia de Burgos. Very symbolic, so a lot of good things in store. Any other advice for writers?
Well, I would like to tell you that publishing should not be the ultimate goal, but expressing yourself. That should be expressing yourself to the utmost. Sácate de adentro todo lo que tengas que decir. Sácatelo de adentro. Y sigue sacándote lo que tienes por dentro, que es mucho. Es mucho.
Migdalia, any advice?
Well, I've been published a lot, but I haven't been read a lot or taught a lot. So publishing it is in a,
How do
is,
you know that?
is in a,
How do you know?
and I have a lot of friends who teach.
But how do you know you haven't been read?
Well, I think maybe
Maybe I don't know. Maybe you have been read. Maybe you have been read. You Huh?
You have been read and you have been taught.
Yeah.
Oh, good. But the thing about it though, that's a good thing. It's a tool though. That's not the way you get to your voice. The way you find who you are as a writer is to tell your truth.
Exactly.
And the more truthful you are, and the more you are able to mine your viscera and say, here it is on the page. That the beauty of you is what makes you publishable, because it'll be undeniably unique. It'll be something that's worthy of literature. And people don't just get published. And even when they do, like I say, it doesn't mean a lot unless there are people who are your advocates, scholars, producers in my case, because I'm a theater artist, you know, open mics. If you write poetry, you need, and I think as a playwright, you also, I talk to myself all the time in my little room when I'm typing, and I'm like acting out all of my parts. And it's like, it's so important to hear your work, to understand if you're really talking and writing the way people talk. And that you're also writing in a way that gives honor to poetry and honor to your people by making sure that it's right. Like the right cadence, the right language, the right silences that you bring into your work, right? All of that is really important. That's about creating a unique world that only you can bring to it.
I like the idea of honor, bringing honor to your people, bringing honor to yourself too, and to life, you know. No maldecir, no maldecir.
Right, well, you start with loving what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, it's not really necessary for money. It's because you love what you do, you have something to say, and you urgently want to say it. Stick to it. Don't let anybody tell you, you know, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, unless it's a really qualified editor, because editors are very important. And also, I would tell you, if you can get into a writing group, you have been or you haven't been? Okay, if are they helpful for you? Okay, that's so you're ahead of the game though. If you're in a writing group and you seem to be, you know, just keep at it. Discipline is important. I mean, you keep hearing write every day. It's very difficult to do it, but writing doesn't have to always be working on a project. It's just, you know, if every day you spend a little time advancing, you know, your writing experience, that's very helpful. And that includes a lot of reading.
Yes, I take my characters on dates, like I take them to the museum, or we
That's
go
beautiful.
to a bar and I get my characters drunk. Like I really want to be church, and
That I
I
love.
want to listen to them pray, like how do they pray? And that way I never feel like, oh, I have writer's block today, because I couldn't put something down on paper. It's like, but where are they? Who are they in the world? What kind of music do they listen to? Like I create soundtracks for my characters.
I love that.
So I think there's
true.
things that you can do
Yeah.
that are not just writing, that are writing.
Yeah, it's true. I used to listen, like eavesdrop on conversations to get the dialogue. You know, I mean, I would listen like, oh, that's really good, you know.
Well, because they are
And right,
my characters, so they're creating themselves, right? So if I go look at a Van Gogh,
Okay.
and they're about to do a Van Gogh Pokemon exhibit, which I think is ridiculous, but anyway, if you go and see a Van Gogh and you have this thing you want to say, or these people you have with you in your work, and they say, no, I don't like that color, I really like that blue, I think I need to go to the Manet room, I need to go see Botero, I need to go see, you know, whatever they need to go see. I need to go see photographs. I don't like looking at paintings. You understand something deeply about your character that you wouldn't normally know. And for me, that's the essence of playwriting. It's like understanding the living, vital part of your character that will always have an opinion about everything, the same way all people do, right? So you bring yourself to it, but then you also have to let them tell you some things about who they are and how they can walk in the world.
But I come back to my question. They don't get out of the character?
No.
Very strange. Because my characters always get out of themselves, and then I don't find them anymore.
You mean they run away from you?
Yes, they go. They don't want to be.
what are you scared of?
They don't want to be who they are, and then
You can imagine her mind at work. You can imagine her mind at work. Are there questions from Zoom watchers? We're out of time. Oh.
That requires a lot of psychology, by the way.
Okay.
Another question.
Thank you so much. Gracias. Gracias a todos.